All over the country, governors, mayors, city councilmen, state legislators, they're all asking the same questions. Why are black people arrested so much? Why are they convicted so much? Why do they get sent to prison so much? And when they get out of prison, why do they go back so much? We've done a lot of stories on this. In San Francisco, the Board of Supervisors noticed that even though the population of that town is only 6%, the number of people failing to show for their traffic tickets, failure to appear tickets, was 50%. In Kansas City, out in the middle of nowhere in Kansas City, a school board member looked at the same kind of numbers. He noticed that compared to white children, especially Asian children, that the black children were being disciplined and suspended and expelled wildly out of proportion. He wanted to know what the hell was going on because everybody knows that white kids and black kids behave just the same. So why, don't they? So why so many extra suspensions? It's funny though, when everybody asks these questions, they always have the answer already on hand. The only reason there's any disparity between white people and black people is because black people are relentless victims of relentless white racism all the time, everywhere. That explains everything. The latest people to take a bite of this apple are the folks up in Vermont. The Vermont state legislature just created a commission, so you know they're serious, on this racial disparity. And the Attorney General's, leading the way, carrying the torch. And we're going to hear the Attorney General in a minute. You got to hear this. We're going to hear him in a minute say, listen, if we know what the proportion of black people is in Vermont, it's about 1.7%. And we know how many, we know that compared to the number of people, there are like 10 times, like the black population in the prisons is 10%. That's wildly out of proportion. So he says, well, we wouldn't expect to see that, would we? Well, my question is, where don't you see that? Where don't you see the black criminality wildly out of proportion? Where? Waiting. In the meantime, let's listen to this audio. And the only problem listening to this audio, I can't guarantee your IQ's not going to go down by like 20 points after hearing this. But after we hear this, let's come on back because I think we can get to a better explanation of what's going on here.
The first meeting of Vermont's Racial Disparities in the Criminal and Juvenile Justice System Advisory Panel was Tuesday in Montpelier. The legislature has tasked its members with providing recommendations to address systemic racial disparities across the state. Act 54 created the panel to review and make recommendations regarding bias in all areas of state government, with a particular focus on the criminal and juvenile justice systems. Training and education of officials, traffic stop data, and public education must be included in their review. Vermont Attorney General T.J. Donovan says the panel must undertake a difficult and honest conversation about discrimination in Vermont.
Everybody should be treated equally under the law, and racism exists. We have to address it. We have to come together to address it, and we have to ask some tough questions here in Vermont. If you look at our DOC population, one would say those that are incarcerated in our state prisons should reflect our general population, but that's not the case when we're talking about the percentage of people of color, particularly African Americans, who are incarcerated in this state. So we can ask some tough questions. I think this is probably the most important time because of Charlottesville to talk about the issues of race, to talk about the issues of civil rights, to talk about the issues of equal protection under the law, and to stand up against hate.
Burlington Community Justice Center Offender Workforce Development Specialist Christine Longmore was elected chair of the committee. While the initial meeting focused on data collection by police agencies, she says the panel must review many aspects of the criminal justice system.
Each one, because of the way that they do their work, has different ways of collecting information and analyzing the work that they do. And I think that as much as we can create sort of uniform systems, that's going to be really important. we have so much work to do. We can't just point the finger at the police. The justice system is way bigger. They're the front end of the justice system, and we need to be able to look at all of the aspects of the justice system.
Vermont Chief Judge Brian Grierson says the panel's work reflects the national dialogue.
More than anything else, it's a recognition that what's happening nationwide, Vermont is part of that. And I've always said that what Vermont experiences is similar to what happens outside of Vermont, but it's all proportional, proportion to the size of our state, our population. So it's a matter of degree. But we've got the same problems, the same issues, and we still need to focus in on them.
Rights and democracy advocate Mari Cordes says she has witnessed racial discrimination in the healthcare system and says all institutions, whether they are public or private, need to take a hard look at the issue.
Many of us are taking a hard look at our bias. Many people are still not. So I think what's transferable is for institutions to have the courage to admit that it exists within them personally, individually, and within the organization, and then take strong steps to establish processes and systems that will address it.
The panel must provide a report to the legislature on or before January 15th. I'm Pat Bradley, WAMC News.
Okay, people of Vermont, there's only two explanations for what's happening in Vermont. One, white people are getting away with murder, assault, robbery, home invasions, all sorts of other bad things, and they're getting away with it, and black people are not. But if that's the case, where are the victims? Where are the videos? Where are the 911 calls? Where are the police reports of all this white criminality so wildly out of proportion? All these people, where are the dead bodies? So the only other explanation is that black people are committing lots and lots of crimes wildly out of proportion in Vermont. I vote for explanation number two. I have a little bit of experience with this whole black criminality and prison thing, even before I started writing books about it. When I was a reporter in San Diego, I did a story about a guy named Kelvin Wiley. Kelvin was a black guy who his former girlfriend accused of she said he tried to kill me. Came into my apartment one morning, put his arms around me, hit me with a toolbox. Kelvin wrote my editor a letter. I actually fished it out of the trash can. While I was waiting for my editor, I was so important, he took a phone call while I was sitting next to him, talking to him. So I pulled the letter out there and he goes, "Hey, I'm not guilty of this. I didn't do this." Even the judge at sentencing said the main witness against me was lying. Well, everything Kelvin said was true, because I went and I started pulling threads. I found out there was a forensic report that said, yeah, it looked like her wounds were self-inflicted. I found another old boyfriend of this same woman, Tony DiGiovanni. He said, yeah, she tried the same thing to me. So I did the story. I showed that this crime, I developed new witnesses. I got this dude out of state prison. This was a big deal on NPR, the LA Times, San Diego Union Tribune. Had agents shopping this true story around Hollywood. So if there are a lot of innocent black people in prison who don't belong there, let's get them out. I mean, that dude you heard, he's the attorney general. Why can't he get them out? Why can't the governor get them out? They're innocent. That's another explanation, by the way. I'll just let them go. Drop the charges, pardon them. I don't care, whatever you want to do up there in Vermont. Well, let me tell you something about those people we just saw. They're not as dumb as they seem. They're not going to go letting a whole bunch of really nasty people on the streets of Vermont who are guilty as hell of committing a lot of crimes. You want the rest of the bad news, Vermont? Well, here it is. Not only is black criminality wildly out of proportion all over the country, not only are a whole bunch of, blacks wildly overrepresented in prisons all over the country, and the numbers are bad. 3 times, 8 times, 10 times, 1,000 times difference in black on white versus white on black crime rates. Enormous difference. As bad as those numbers are, the real numbers are even worse. What about stitches for snitches? What about witness intimidation? What about breaking the prison to cradle pipeline so we start arresting 50% fewer people? What about all the crimes in all these chocolate cities where the clearance rate is so low on all these crimes? I mean, they don't catch anybody for committing these crimes in places like Detroit, Chicago, New York. They might catch the murderers, but when you get down lower, I mean, the numbers are just ridiculous. Sometimes they're in the like teens. They're catching 10, 15, 20% of the robbers, the home invaders, the car thieves, and less. But the one thing that's really freaking out the prosecutors all over the country right now is witness intimidation. This is a black thing all over the country. Get stories like this all the time. We've done many, many stories here on this. We've done a lot of stories on this in Don't Make the Black Kids Angry. Oh yeah, I forgot one thing. Bronx juries, where a black jury will tend not to convict a black defendant. A lot about that, and Don't Make the Black Kids Angry too. Anyway, let's look at a recent story. This story is less than a day or two old. Out of Detroit City. Witness intimidation, the highest level.
Family in fear tonight on Detroit's west side after their home is firebombed.
It happened early this morning at this home on Marlowe Street that's right near Schoolcraft and Hubble. Our Steve Garagiola spoke to the homeowner who thinks this is retaliation for something she's planning to do.
At about 2 o'clock this morning, the family that lived in this house lost everything. A fire starting at the back of the house, but come around this way. At the same time, a second fire started here on the front porch. This was no accident. Somebody didn't want this family to get out alive.
We're like, what was that? He goes downstairs and he come running right back up like, grab the kids, the house is on fire.
Ebony Walls, her husband, and 6 children were all in the home this morning when the fire started with a bang. Arson investigators told them this was clearly an intentional fire.
And it looked like it was barricaded. Something was up by the door burning, so we weren't meant to get out of this house.
Ebony is a witness scheduled to testify in a criminal case of sexual assault in Warren. She and her family have faced threats for months, but she insists she won't be intimidated into silence.
I won't let them shut me up. I'm going to help protect you. This is still not going to shut me up because God is going to bless us regardless.
Ebony says you have to do what's right, even in the face of threats.
People can't keep being scared just because of what other people may do. And if I have to lose my life to protect her, I'll do that.
Today, the price of bravery was very high.
It's my 4-year-old. He says, Mommy, don't cry. It's going to be okay. The firemen are putting the fire out so we can go back home. We can't go back home. There's no home to go to.
Well, that is a very brave lady. Neighbors, friends, the Red Cross all reached out this afternoon to try to offer some help, but this is a family that is really hurting tonight. Kimberly, Devin, back to you.
Obviously hurting and very strong that woman is. Steve, do police have any suspects at this point?
Well, I guess the answer to that is yes and no. Yes, in that because of the case she's involved in, there's a pretty good idea where this points. But no, in that it seems that as far as what happened this morning, there looks like there's no specific evidence that points to a specific suspect or suspects.
Unbelievable. All right, Steve, keep us posted. Thank you.
And talk about not reporting crimes. The LA Times just did a story the other day. A black woman's going, oh yeah, I've been raped twice, both by black guys, once at a white college, once at a black college. Both times, there was a lot of pressure on me not to report this crime. And the LA Times said, oh yeah, it happens a lot among black women. They're not reporting rape. We did a story here, we did a story a few months ago about how one woman's magazine said 60-65% of black women are raped before they get to college. And 90% of those rapes are not reported. Our old buddy Melissa Harris Perry gives us an excellent explanation of that.
is the very idea that Western press, that those who are not from these nations, who are not Muslim ourselves, who are not part of these traditions, can look at your article and say, look at how horrible those men or those societies or that religion is. And it's something, it's part of why, for example, we have an underreporting of rape and domestic violence in African American communities, because we know the violence enacted on black men by police, so we often don't call. Right?
Of course, none of this stops the trolls. Every day, there's always a new troll, a new crop of trolls. Somebody, gets some of our videos and maybe puts them on the grill, or they're rude, or HuffPo Black Voices, and everybody, or other places, and people just kind of flock here for the first time. A lot of trolls, and the only thing trolls ever have to say, especially the new ones, is white people do it too. So a guy today sent me this video. He's 3 years old. He goes, "White people do it too, Colin." Yawn. Ha ha ha. So it's a he called it a riot at a pumpkin festival, I think in Keene, might be Keene College, maybe it's in New Hampshire. But look at what we're seeing. What are we seeing? We're seeing a bunch of white kids throw things at each other. Okay, not good. But where's the fire? Where are the gunshots? Where's the property destruction? Where are the sirens? Where are the cars running down the street into the crowds? Where are the broken windows? Where are the cars being turned over and set on fire? You call that a riot? You call this a riot? This is nothing. It's not a riot. Hell, you have 100 of those things worse happen. 100 things worse than that happening every night. Let out fights in bars. Guns, knives, people getting hurt, people getting killed. Capiche? So let's wish our brothers and sisters up in Vermont all the best of luck in finding out these really complicated reasons why there are a lot more black people in prison in Vermont than there should be. But when you're writing your report, when you're gathering your evidence, I do have to give you a little bit of caution, because I could tell from looking at those pictures that most of the people in that room, their only familiarity with any kind of criminality work is watching CNN. When you're doing that, just remember this: at no time in any part of your investigation or your committee meetings are you ever allowed to admit one fact, take one piece of testimony, consider even for a nanosecond anything that would make the black kids angry.